Hey guys, it's DovahNiik here, and this is the follow-up to the video I did before about what an anxiety disorder is. And this one is about the treatments that you can get, or at least the treatments that I have had and experienced. Keeping in mind that I'm not a professional, I don't work in mental health at all. This is entirely from a patient point of view. So, there's probably many more treatments out there than the ones that I've tried myself. Now, I'm going to start with medication because this was the first sort of port of call for me as a sufferer, and there are many different types of medication that you can get. Some that you will be able to take with other ones, I've noticed, and then certain types you cannot take in conjunction with other medication, or even St. John's wort, the herb, that will interact with some. So always make sure you tell your doctor and you go for your doctor's advice with medication. Do not self-treat with anything. Now, I was given, when I first sort of started to notice trouble with anxiety affecting my school, I was pulled out of school for throwing up all the time, and that was purely anxiety based, sort of making me throw up. And so I started to have a home tutor, and at the same time my mother took me to the doctors, and the doctor just literally turned around and said to me, it's anxiety, and he prescribed me with citalopram, 20 milligram I think it was at the time, and I stayed on that for a very long time. That was the only treatment at that point for me. I don't think I even had regular doctor's visits after that. They just popped me on these, and away I went for a couple of years, I think. Apart from the usual checkups, blood pressure tests, and all this, I didn't really have anything else. And to me, that was the only treatment for anxiety at the time. That's all that I knew was effective. I didn't know about any sort of talking therapies. Now, citalopram is an interesting one. I think the majority of you will be put on this if you have started to struggle with anxiety issues, probably many other issues, but it seems to be the first one, and it was fine. I did notice a significant improvement in my sort of day-to-day level, sorry about the notifications, of anxiety. It did lessen it. I became what I would describe to you as slightly numb. Unfortunately for me, it affects your stomach as well, and it gives you a little bit of tummy ache. So I became extraordinarily travel sick. But that's not just with the citalopram. I get that through every single medication that I've tried for anxiety. It will give me upset stomachs, and it will make me extraordinarily motion sick and make my reflux worse and all of that. But if you're struggling with anxiety and it's crippling you, I think a bit of stomach ache, do you know what I mean, sort of levels it out a little bit. And it does work quite well. Now, it didn't stop my panic attacks. I averaged them out, I say it all the time, at about 8 a day. But at the height, I went to 16. One day I had 36. So you can imagine that was a pretty shitty day. It didn't seem to stop those in any way, shape, or form. But my general anxiety level was lower. And I think that sort of affects how many panic attacks that you do have in the day. So it worked for me, and it worked for me for a lot of years. What the problem was, it was only affecting my anxiety, and it did nothing for what was causing my anxiety. But back then I didn't know that. I just thought anxiety was sort of like chicken pox. You get it, nothing causes it. Do you know what I mean? Until I got to 17 and 18 and 19, and I hadn't left the house without my mum. And we went everywhere together, and I had no friends, and I just started to get really fed up. So I went back to the doctors, and first thing we did was change my medication. I had to wean off citalopram, and then I went on to this one, a sedative. I can't remember what it was called, but like I said, there's many different medications that you'll go on. Now, they gave me one that had a sedative in it, hoping that the extra sleep would help. It did for a while, but the problem with the ones that are sedatives is that it makes you dopey in the daytime as well, and it's not really helpful if you're wanting to get out and about. You don't want to feel like that. But this time, he also made me go on something called cognitive behavioural therapy. This was the first I'd ever heard of it at 19, and he described it to me as not the talking therapy. I forgot what it's called now. where you go see a psychiatrist. It's not you talk about your life and your problems and all that. Cognitive behavioural therapy is sort of like self-help, and you will have to cooperate 100% in it. And so I went there with this in mind. I saw a therapist before that just to talk about my problems, but after a few sentences in, she sent me to cognitive behavioural therapy and said she thinks this might be the first port of call for me to help me get out of the house and things like that, because talking about your problems is not going to help you physically overcome anxiety. So now, when I went in, it was described to me that anxiety works in a cycle. You have these sort of ideas about things, and the ideas make you anxious, and then you react in a certain way to your anxiety, and then it makes the anxiety worse, and then back to the thoughts, and it goes around like this. You sort of create your own very, very vicious circle. What cognitive behavioural therapy will do is to help you understand this cycle and understand your thought processes in it, and then break it. And that was exactly what happened. But the first time I did this, I wasn't prepared to do some of the things that made me anxious. Now, I'm trying to give you an example. Now, my biggest one was leaving the house without my mum, because I didn't trust people. I despised them at the time, to be honest. Bad childhood stuff. But yeah, and I didn't want to. And I went into this without realising I would have to literally do the things that made me anxious. And she wanted me to take baby steps. And you have a diary and you write down all the things that scare you and your thought processes. It's really rather technical. I think I'd be here all day if I tried to explain to you exactly how it works. But one of the steps is to do little bits of what scares you, like sort of take baby steps one day. And you'll go out and you'll do the thing that makes you anxious, and then you'll write down your new thought process. So if I was anxious about going out because I thought that something horrific would happen to me, or that somebody would start on me, or something would happen to me and I'd be embarrassed, anything, then you have got to challenge that. So you go outside, say I walk around the street a little bit, I'm extraordinarily anxious, but nothing happened. So you've challenged it, and then you write that down, and then you do the same thing, and you do it, and you do it, and you do it over and over again, and push yourself just a little bit more until it becomes second nature to you. Sort of like learning how to play the piano. You've got to learn how to think differently. You're retraining your brain. And so we did that, and then the first sort of sessions I got one a month for 6 months. It didn't work, but I understood how my brain was working more, which was fantastic, and that is key to, if you ask me, to defeating anxiety, is learning how your brain is working and the things that you are doing to feed it. So I didn't come away empty-handed. I came away with some knowledge, but it didn't work. I wasn't ready. It was too much for me. I couldn't do it. I was setting myself too small goals and not telling her that I was okay. I'm okay with just going to the shop. I made out that was a bigger problem. So she would be like, wow, you are really tackling your problems. You're doing really well. When really I wasn't. It was just, I was a coward. So we went on some more medications, and I've been on things like trazodone, citalopram, sertraline. The last one I was on that recently, was fluoxetine. Now, I had a fantastic run with fluoxetine. This has worked the best out of all the medications I've taken since I was 14, and there have been a lot of them. Fluoxetine worked the best. Unfortunately, it upset my stomach the most. I was being sick, just randomly. You were put on lansoprazole or some kind of acid relief if you go on that, because it is that bad for your tummy. But I was only on it for 6 months, and that's the least I've ever been on any. And then I felt fantastic after, and I had to wean off. And you do have to wean off. When you're on medication, please do not all of a sudden one day think, nah, this is not working, I'm going to stop taking them, because you're going to go through withdrawals. And withdrawals, let me tell you, they are bad. They are really bad. You'll get brain zapped, you'll feel sick, you'll be shaky, your anxiety will be 20 times worse than it ever was. And you'll just mess yourself up a lot. So you have to sort of gradually come off medication, bit by bit, probably over the space of 6 months. for most of them. And there you go. But yeah, I do recommend having a word with your doctor about fluoxetine if you are struggling. I didn't feel as numb as some of the medications can make me feel. Like, I wasn't feeling anxious a lot of the time, but I wasn't feeling anything particularly good either. I don't know why. Probably just me. Fluoxetine, it brought me into myself. I wasn't sort of anxiously like this, looking around all the time. I was in my moment, and it was really good. So yeah. But if you're finding that you've been on medication for a long time and it's not helping, it's probably better that you sort of go in there with a therapy and medication type of treatment, because one of them on their own, I don't think they're that effective. As I say, it's okay to treat the symptoms of a problem, well, the side effects, but you've got to treat the cause. You've got to treat what is causing this anxiety. So you're probably going to need cognitive behavioural therapy at some point. And I know a lot of people out there have tried it, like me, and said, oh, I didn't like it. She was too pushy, and this and that. And it's because you're not ready. And it took me years. I started it at 19, and I did a load of sessions once every single year. I'm trying again. I'm going to do it this year. And I failed until I was 26, 25, 26. And that one is the only time that I've gone in 100% with the mindset that whatever task she gives me, I am going to do it. And I did it. And I ended up volunteering at a children's centre for 6 months. That was my final battle. And I lost a stone of weight from struggling with anxiety. I was that nervous about doing it. I lost a stone of weight. But at the end of it, I am now like this. I can go out and I can talk to people, and I can get through the day. I don't have panic attacks anymore. So that is how far I've come with this treatment of facing my fears head on. I don't have daily panic attacks. Much better. I'm still anxious. You'll probably notice halfway through this that I'm like that. But it is manageable. And it's not just the physically going out and doing things. It is understanding how your mind works, the cycles, and the thought process that you have that you feel like might be helping you with your anxiety. Shying away from the things that make you anxious. You feel like you're helping yourself because you're avoiding those anxious feelings, but you're not, because you're saying to your brain, yeah, you're right. I feel better being in the house, being away from that fear. That means that it's harmful. Being outside is harmful. And it's not. It really isn't. Your brain's just trying to save you from a threat that isn't there. And you've got to retrain your brain. And at the same time, medication will help you deal with the sort of symptoms of being anxious. And it might help you. It might just give you that edge that this time you go for cognitive therapy, you'll do it. So just find your right mix. As I said, it could be medication. It could be a sedative medication. I think people with extreme anxiety tend to be given things like diazepam, and that is very short term because they are very addictive. It never worked for me. I was still anxious after diazepam. So that is very short term. So don't get used to those. And do not use drugs, recreational drugs, or alcohol as a treatment, especially alcohol. Because it makes it worse. It makes it significantly worse in the long run. I know there's things like hypnotherapy you could try. I've never tried it, but who knows? It stopped people from smoking and things like that. Exercise, that's a big one. I nearly forgot to mention. One of the biggest factors in anxiety with me seems to be lack of exercise. When I go through sort of my withdrawn phases, that's when my anxiety is at the highest. And I swear it is because when you're exercising, you're burning away that excess adrenaline. So when I'm having a really rough day, I go for a run. I work out 4 or 5 times a week as it is now. And if I don't, then I can feel it, sort of the tension building, and it needs to be released somehow. But exercise is fantastic. Especially exercise outdoors when you can be get into nature and just take a breath and ground yourself a little bit. That's help. Grounding is another technique, sort of when your thoughts are escaping from you and going crazy, taking some deep breaths and sitting down saying, nothing is happening to me right now. I am sat at my chair, at my desk, and I'm looking at my screen. That is it. Nothing else is happening. I am here. It's your thoughts that are escaping from you. Physically ground yourself to where you are. Remind yourself that nothing is going wrong. That seems to help me. When I used to get anxious on the bus, I used to just sit there and take a breath and like, no, nothing's happening. The bus isn't going to crash. I'm just sat in a chair looking out of the window and I'm feeling anxious. That is it. That is all that's happening right now. And I have felt anxious 100 times before and nothing bad has ever happened to me. And that was one of the biggest things that really helped me. It helped me with the palpitations, which always set off my anxiety. Eating right is another one. Fatty foods seem to do something to me. Like, I think it's sort of, you try to treat your body the best you can, and when you're not, it affects you. And physically, I find that my stomach sets off my anxiety. If I've got a lot of sort of acid in my stomach and it's silent, so it doesn't reach the throat, when I'm feeling that sort of acid rise to there, all of a sudden it can set off panic. It's the weirdest thing, and I don't know why. But every now and again when I get ranitidine for that, I find myself less anxious in general. So there are lots of different treatments. If you experiment with them and try to figure out exactly what's causing it and what's triggering panic attacks, like I said, reflux, that feeling of acid rising, I think it sort of told my brain like it was panic rising when it wasn't. It's acid. That set me off. Exercise, food, yes. You could try hypnotherapy. Some people are trying cannabis oil at the moment. I take cannabis oil for the tension that I have in my neck from anxiety. And I'll be honest, it probably might be helpful because it's working for me quite well. How it works for anxiety specifically, I don't know because I've only just started. So if anybody has any other treatments like this, be careful with St. John's wort again. That is a treatment, yeah. It can help anxiety and depression apparently, but you can't mix it with certain medications. Always check with your doctor first. But yeah, let me know whatever you find. If there's any other therapies that I haven't mentioned, or medications that you find particularly useful, just write it in the comments for me. But I hope that this gave anybody even a little bit of insight into all the different treatments, and just at least made you feel like just because you've got anxiety now doesn't mean you're always going to be like this, and it isn't hopeless. There are many things that you can do. So thank you for watching, guys, and my next video I will be talking a little bit about depression. Thank you for watching, guys.